Chris and Chris Talk Movies.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chris Ferry, and of course, this is my co-host.
My name is Chris Huddleston.
And today, the two of us are very excited to be talking to you about a movie that, spoiler alert, we both love. Denis Villeneuve's Blade Runner 2049. Do you have a synopsis for us, Mr. Huddleston?
Our buddy Denny. I feel like we've mentioned him so many times on this podcast that we should get some kind of kickback from him, right? So it is a 2018 film, as we said, directed by Denis Villeneuve. And it stars Ryan Gosling, Harrison Ford, Ana de Armas, Robin Wright, Jared Leto, and some others. And the synopsis is as such: Officer K, played by Ryan Gosling, a new Blade Runner for the Los Angeles Police Department, unearths a long-buried secret that has the potential to plunge what's left of society into chaos. His discovery leads him on a quest to find Rick Deckard, Harrison Ford, a former Blade Runner who's been missing for 30 years.
That's right. And if you are new to our recordings, we do spoil these movies, so you are forewarned. Let's just jump right into it. I mean, I think we certainly haven't made any secret in other recordings about how much both of us like this movie. Going a little deeper in the synopsis here. So Blade Runner, of course, Ridley Scott's sci-fi classic, which was set in 2019. This is a sequel to that film, including some of the same characters, at least one of the same characters, Rick Deckard. We are 30 years later in Los Angeles again, following a new Blade Runner as he tries to figure out what the deal is with a potentially replicant-born child. So replicants are human robots. They're not made of metal. They're designed. They're organic material, but they're grown in a lab. And then they have certain limitations. At the end of the first movie, what we discover is that they resent this, some of them. And there's a series of rebellions. And what their creator was toying with, we discover in this film, was the possibility of having replicants be able to sexually reproduce on their own without needing to be created. In the 30 years since we ended the first film, the world has been threatened by famine. A new guy has bought the intellectual property of Tyrell Corporation that owned the technology to produce replicants. And there has also been a global blackout, which destroyed vast amounts of global data, most of it, in fact. So the world looks a lot the same, sounds a lot the same, but there have been a lot of changes over the past 30 years.
Okay, so my thoughts on this, I would say, and this might sound like blasphemy to some, the original Blade Runner is a film that I appreciate more than love. It's before I ever saw the movie, I had the Marvel Comics adaptation for some reason as a kid, which I read as you do when you're a child. And then it was a few years later when I actually saw it. And I always felt it's visually stunning, slow, kind of strange. And I always, and, it was that time when, for me, when it was like, oh, this is Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones and Han Solo. I want to see everything he does. And, so again, I always appreciated it, I think, more than really, it was never a movie that I really loved. I liked it more than loved it. So when this one came along, I was interested in it, but then I saw it in the cinema, in the movie theater, and I was really blown away by it. It's Roger Deakins, I believe, is the cinematographer for this, who worked with Spielberg a lot. And I think, just reading up on this before watching, I think this was his first Oscar. I think he's won another Oscar I think maybe he won an Oscar for 1917 after this. But it's similar, but somewhat different in the look of it. You have very much the style of the first film, but then, like, with the background behind you, we have some blues and purples, kind of working in there that I don't think we really had in the original film. I really like Ryan Gosling in this role. He does a really great job. All the acting performances are excellent, and I think when it's a deliberately paced film. I guess you could say it's not super action packed, but for maybe the first half or so. But you get into where he goes and finds Harrison Ford, Deckard, in it's Las Vegas, right? Where he goes, and it's no longer habitable, or it's
They make references to a dirty bomb having been detonated there.
Yeah. So he finds him, and I really like the way they use Harrison Ford. It's not just a glorified cameo. I really like the way Harrison Ford is used. And then you get into, there's a great scene where they kind of the bad guys have Harrison Ford in, it's not exactly one of the spinners like the police, I don't know what they call the cars they use or whatever, but there's just a great fight scene there. So I just feel like there's a lot to love about this, and I personally prefer this to the original quite a bit.
I do too. And I think we're going to do a series of points as we go. The overview being that we agree both. I mean, the Blade Runner is a work. It's a modern masterpiece of science fiction. It changed the game in a number of ways. This one comes along and I think takes a good hard look at the first one, and without being blasphemous about super fans, maybe analyzes a few ways in which this one might be more entertaining to a modern audience. I think some of the hurdles of the first one was that it was such a thinker in many ways, despite being visually stunning, that people sort of left scratching their heads saying, that looked really cool, but I missed a lot of what was going on in there, right? I think this one has a bit of that too. It's definitely a detective film and you have to be paying close attention. And I think it benefits from multiple watchings, which, most mainstream movies I think should not have to do. But it's all there. And I think that it is more successful at being a work of entertainment in addition to being a sequel to the original film.
In conclusion, what would you say about Blade Runner?
I mean, I love it. Give it my highest rating. I am a science fiction fan. I think if you're a science fiction fan, especially if you liked the original Blade Runner and you know anything about it and appreciate what that did to science fiction, if you're a fan of Denis Villeneuve, if you're a fan of any of the actors in this, because the performances are great. This is not an action film. It's not a rollicking, roller coaster ride. It's not Transformers. It's a detective story set in a very thorough, very beautifully drawn future. I think it works as a popcorn movie and a think piece. I mean, obviously, I've talked about all of the different themes in the film, and I probably could talk for another hour about it. So maybe not if your date hates science fiction, but if you want to sit down with a bowl of popcorn, you're going to have a good time with this movie. Watch it on as big a screen as you possibly can. And if you've got a good sound system, hook that up too, because it sounds as good as it looks.
Yeah, for sure. It's for a movie of this budget, to say it is a cult film, I think would not be exactly the correct description, but it underperformed for whatever. It's long, which is, we've talked about this trend before, but you would hope that in the same way that the original Blade Runner, gained an audience, that this would do the same. And I would imagine that this would grow in appreciation over time, especially that Dune has done well, at least well enough that they're making the second half of it. So maybe, some of the people that really got into Dune will maybe say, "Oh, I want to search out other things by this creator." And I talk about this in our Dune uh, review. I prefer this film to Dune. I mean, they're not, they're very different in a lot of ways, but watching this again, it makes me a little sad thinking, oh, because I think the plan was for this to be a new trilogy of Blade Runner movies, and I wish that had worked out, that could have gotten to do another film or another couple, because I just think this, they've done some animated things, and there is a live action series that is in the works with Ridley Scott is producing it. And so this is a universe or a world that, I think you can explore in a lot of ways without what we're seeing with so many movies now, where it's like, oh, we're going to, here's this one-off thing that's been made, and we're going to do a prequel and a sequel and a, this to the side and all that. And I think this, for me, this universe very much lends itself to, there's a lot of things that you can explore with this.
Oh yeah. When you say, I think there's a lot to explore in the universe of Blade Runner, I couldn't agree with you more. In this film, they reference being on 9 other worlds, and they keep talking about going off world. I mean, you've got 9 other worlds right there. And not to mention, we've only stayed in Los Angeles. In this one, we managed to get out to, to Las Vegas. There's a whole planet to explore, and everything is so detailed and rich. It seems like you could do almost any number of stories.
Okay, so, but our final word on Blade Runner is, if you like sci-fi, I mean, there are definitely people that would find this film boring. But if you're into, kind of a mix of not just, this isn't Guardians of the Galaxy or Star Wars.
Absolutely not.
There is some action in it, but this is more of a somewhat cerebral.
It's a detective film. It's
right.
A detective film in the style of the old noir detective films. And I think the pace is not that all far off from that either, but it's confusing because it is set in this incredibly lush, visually stunning future world. So that can be distracting. You're like, oh, flying cars. And, it's like, wow, but it is science fiction, but it's fundamentally, it's a detective story. And that's the pace at which it moves.
Yep. It's a good one.
It's a very nice movie for your face. So watch it. And do you have any? Oh, Chris and Chris Talk Movies at gmail.com. That's our handle. We are on the socials. We are on the visuals. If you're watching us, please like and subscribe. If you're listening to us, thanks, baby.